So first things first, Warcraft 3 Reforged, I believe, is now officially the worst user-rated game on Metacritic. That record was previously held by Day 1 Gary's Incident, which used to have a user score of 0.4, but people went out of their way to artificially boost this game so that Warcraft 3 Reforged would hold that crown now. And while I don't actually think that Warcraft 3 Reforged is a worse game than Day 1 Gary's Incident, nobody gives a damn about Gary's Incident, whereas a lot of people cared about the success of Warcraft 3 Reforged. People wanted this to be good. There's emotional attachment to this. And the level of disappointment on how botched Warcraft 3 Reforged turned out to be, I think, is greater than this one game nobody gives a damn about. That's what I believe this 0.5 user score represents. So here we are. With that out of the way, let's move on to the topic at hand, Blizzard's response to Warcraft 3 Reforged launch disaster. This is a game that broke a bunch of promises, it engaged in false advertising, the release itself was very buggy and broken, a lot of cut features, not only in Reforged, but also in the original, because the original game was merged into Reforged, downgraded cutscenes from what was shown at BlizzCon, a worse user interface, awful new custom maps policy where Blizzard gets to own everything you make, and the, of course, tarnishing of the original game in every way imaginable. All of that has contributed to this 0.5 user score, and Blizzard has caught wind of the not-so-subtle backlash, and here's what they had to say, and as you'd expect from Blizzard, the response is just pathetic. It is boilerplate, addresses very little. They failed to really take responsibility or admit everything they got wrong. They failed to admit much of anything here, and in part, they put a bit of the blame on the players, like very subtly. Here's what they said. Hail, Warcraft 3 players, we've been following the discussions the past couple days and want to thank you for your feedback as well as your support. First off, we want to say we're sorry to those of you who didn't have the experience you wanted, and we'd like to share our plans for what's coming next. Notice that they don't say, here's where we fucked up. They say, you expected something, we're sorry you didn't get that, as if to imply that it was the expectations that led to disappointment. Blizzard, you're the ones who set the expectations. You're the ones who made certain promises. You're the ones who set the tone for what people expect out of the game. And you are the ones who didn't deliver. I mean, your fucking website still has the enhanced cutscene from BlizzCon, which is not what we got in the final game. You're still advertising this crap, even though it's not in the final game. So don't talk about our expectations. Talk about what you didn't deliver on. Talk about your own false advertising. Admit that you failed. It was you. Not us, not our expectations, it was you. Moving on, there were a few hours during launch day where we experienced server load issues that impacted players' ability to jump right in, but we were able to resolve those later in the day. Separate from that, we have seen community feedback about different aspects of Reforged that we wanted to take some time to address. So server load issues can happen on launch day, whatever, that's fine, but there are plenty of other aspects of Warcraft 3 Reforged that were just so broken that people were unable to get into like custom maps, for example. People had trouble booting up the campaign even. It was just a whole mess that goes beyond just server load issues. And then here it reads, before we go on, the team is excited that Warcraft 3 Reforged is finally upon us, and we are fully committed to supporting the game for a long time to come. See, I hate that this is what they're focused on. The fact that this is going to be a long-term live service. We're going to keep working on it. But the problem with this game is that it's not even at the starting line. It is way back here when it should be up here. So when you say we're going to work on it long term, what you're really saying is we will eventually get to the starting line. But this is a launch product sold at full price. It should have been at the starting line from the outset. It shouldn't be in this state. The next few patches and updates we'll discuss below are just part of our ongoing plans. This game is an integral part of the Blizzard DNA with a team that loves Warcraft 3, and we're looking forward to pouring our hearts into Reforged and the Warcraft 3 community for the long term. We don't want the final finished product in the long term. We want it now because you advertised, you promised that at launch we were going to get this amazing remaster with enhanced cutscenes and enhanced gameplay features and great rebalancing. That's what you promised. You did not say we're going to give you a shell of a game that's kind of broken at launch and will eventually in the long term get to a point where Reforged justifies the title of Reforged, of a remaster. That was not the promise. One of the concerns with Reforged that we have seen are the visuals when selecting Classic mode. We have identified the bug causing the colors and shading to look different from the original Warcraft 3, and we're testing a fix that will be incorporated in a larger patch addressing this issue and others. We expect to release that late this week. The patch will also address many other known issues such as fixing some portrait animations and audio bugs, implementing some UI fixes, and more. Please keep an eye out for the patch notes for a detailed list of all the bug fixes. It is still incredibly baffling to me that they actually fucked with the original classic game. Why did you touch that at all? Release the remaster, let that be the new thing, but for those who want to go back to the old version, let them do that too. Why do you have to ruin what was already there, what was already finished and heralded? Why do you have to bring that into this new mess? Why, Blizzard? Frickin' why? And the fact that you could fuck up a remaster so badly that you managed to mess up the graphics of the original somehow? How is that even I also discussed this in a previous video, but they even went as far as removing certain things like shadows from the original game. You have to turn on Reforged graphics in order to enable shadows now. Stuff like that is just baffling. Again, it's a retroactive butchering and tarnishing. As for things like portrait animations and audio bugs and UI fixes, yeah, all of that's been discussed as well. The UI in particular, people noticed what a massive downgrade it was from what was shown at BlizzCon. Hard to say if this implementing some UI fixes just means tweaking a few things or actually delivering what was promised. The messed up UI in particular was something that this Warcraft forum user brought up, stating that the beautiful UI and menus of the original are missing. In Reforged client, the menus feel sluggish and less optimized. The chat box overlaps the menus. Atmospheric 3D campaign backgrounds are gone, etc. And somebody else alluded to this by saying that 3D animated campaign backgrounds are gone and that 3D animated portraits in Battle.net are gone, so just a complete regression. Moving on, another area of concern we're seeing is regarding online features such as leaderboards and clans, which applies to all Warcraft 3 players, including those who haven't purchased Reforged. That's another thing. Because of the merging of the classic Warcraft 3 into Reforged, even players who want nothing to do with Reforged will be affected by all the flaws and issues plaguing the so-called remaster. At BlizzCon, we talked a lot about how the team is actively working on standing up the back end to ensure a smooth transition to this new MMR system. Smooth transition? Are you serious right now? Much like we did with StarCraft Remastered, as with Remastered, these and other features will be included in a major patch for Reforged. Why in a major patch? Why wasn't this a day one thing? Which will also address the issue for players of the original game. Just think about that for a minute. What kind of remaster not only botches the remastering and actually is a regression in a lot of ways, but also finds a way to affect the original in such a way that the original game itself gets downgraded? What kind of logic is that? The post continues. We'll share release plans as work progresses in the coming weeks. Please be assured that the team is hard at work on standing these features up. There are some individual concerns we have seen that we're not currently planning to address, and we wanted to give the community a heads up. As of version 1.3 of the original game, we saw very low usage of tournaments and the Reign of Chaos rule set, so we removed both in mid-2019 and version 1.31. Eliminating the maintenance of underused elements has helped us streamline our overall support of the game and focus on areas impacting the most players. That said, we do anticipate that players who prefer Reign of Chaos will find custom games with similar rule sets, which we hope will help satisfy that concern. So let me get this straight. You remove a feature and then say it's up to you guys to re-add the feature that we cut out. And also, the custom games, Blizzard gets to fully own, so, that's a little caveat there. Part of the reason why people might not have been engaging in these tournaments and the Reign of Chaos rule set was because Warcraft 3 was kind of a bit in the down low because it had been so long since the game released, but with the remaster, there's a renewed interest in all aspects of the game, possibly including tournaments and the Reign of Chaos rule set. I mean, a big portion of the community noticed that these features were gone, so just add them back. This is supposed to be a remaster. You're supposed to add on what's already there, not diminish. Or at the very least, again, keep the classic intact and then let Reforged be its own thing. Don't drag the original classic into it, for those who do want to go back to that. The post then talks about the downgraded cutscenes, stating, related to that, as we talked about last year at BlizzCon, where they falsely marketed the way cutscenes would allegedly look in the final game. We know how that turned out. We did not want the in-game cutscenes to steer too far from the original game. That sounds like a BS excuse if I've ever heard one. We went a little deeper into the thought process behind that at the show, but the main takeaway is that the campaigns tell one of the classic stories in Warcraft history, and we want to preserve the true spirit of Warcraft 3 and allow players to relive these unforgettable moments as they were, albeit rebuilt with new animations and the higher fidelity art. This excuse makes absolutely no sense. The dialogue was still intact, the general feel of the scenes was still intact. It was just a matter of making things more cinematic, and from what I saw back then, the general feedback was very positive surrounding this new style, more cinematic style of cutscenes. People would have liked to see this in the final game, but Blizzard didn't deliver on that. They gave us this instead, a remastered version of the original cutscenes that are far less in fidelity than what was originally advertised. And I don't believe for a second that the change from what's on the left to what's on the right between BlizzCon to the Warcraft 3 Reforged final release was something that the Blizzard developers actually wanted to do. I don't believe they, on a creative level, went, you know what, the cutscenes on the left here, we don't like that. Let's go to the right here. Yeah, that looks better. I don't believe that's the case at all. I think it was just they had a deadline and they had to just scale back the project for who knows why, really. I mean, with what they showed at BlizzCon, it already felt like we were reliving Warcraft 3, but just through a more modern, more cinematic lens. People were fine with that. So I don't know why they had to scale it back to such an extent. Again, it is my belief that it's for corporate and technical reasons. That just seems like the more likely scenario to me, and this statement, this paragraph, feels like them trying to hide the constraints that they had to work in and make it seem as though this was a conscious decision that they were happy with, rather than a necessary sacrifice due to corporate elements or because of development issues, whatever it might have been. And it especially feels like they're trying to hide something, or like this didn't turn out as intended, when you consider that the marketing material for this game, especially on the website, still uses that old BlizzCon cutscene that isn't representative of the final product. And the website even touts things like 4+ hours of Reforged in-game cutscenes. A lot of people are seeing that most cutscenes in the game pretty much are very similar, if not identical, to the original, and the few that are remastered aren't at the fidelity that people would have hoped. So, you know, just the false marketing on top of the lack of update, not letting people know before the game launched, hey guys, we had to scale back the cutscenes because of X, Y, and Z, the lack of communication. All of that contributes to just awful optics surrounding all of this. Going back to the Blizzard statement, it concludes with, we know this update doesn't address all questions, but we're committed to the development and support of this game. We hope you'll keep an eye out for this week's patch and future updates, and let us know what you think as we continue fine-tuning things. Until then, thank you as always for your support and passion for Warcraft 3. We appreciate all your feedback, and will continue to keep the Warcraft 3 community updated on everything we're working on. Sincerely, the Warcraft 3 Reforged team. We should not be in a scenario where a remaster of a 17-year-old game feels like the whole infrastructure is being reset, like the developers are starting everything from scratch. A remaster should be an addition to an already set foundation, but no, they've destroyed the foundation itself, and they're redeveloping and reestablishing the foundation again. And there's just so many other unexplained things. You look at this entire list of cut content or missing features or downgraded elements, as pointed out by Warcraft forum users. You look at this list, you read through everything carefully, you look at all that's missing, and then you look at stuff like this, how even unit animations have been dialed back, as thoroughly relayed by this Warcraft Blizzard forum user. And it is abundantly clear that the game was just not finished, that development cannot be finished on time, and that's the real culprit of Reforged's issues. And my main issue with this developer update right here is that they don't acknowledge any of that. They don't say that, development was rough. They don't say we couldn't finish this game on time and we released it anyway. And the sad part is they're probably not allowed to say that. Activision Blizzard wouldn't allow them to admit any of that. Developers are forced to write these statements that paint a very negative situation in a positive light. And they're forced to say things like, we want to say we're sorry to those of you who didn't have the experience you wanted, rather than say we're sorry that we fucked up on our end and that we failed to deliver on our promises, what we advertised. We're sorry that we failed you. That's not what's being said here. No doubt there are developers who want to be more upfront and more honest about what actually happened here. No doubt developers know that we're not this stupid that we'd buy into whatever is being said here, that we think that there wasn't some trouble during development. They just cannot acknowledge it because of corporate mandates or because of the position they're in, whatever it is. And so here's the statement we got. And you can see, if you look at the responses to this statement, that the Warcraft community, the Blizzard community, they're not stupid. They're not buying into it. Here's a summary provided by user Espada. He said, "Summary, you aren't ever going to actually apologize and acknowledge what you did. So instead, we'll just say sorry to those of you who didn't have the experience you wanted. You're fixing some of the bugs this week. You're going to add the online features like clans and leaderboards that should have been there day one, but aren't telling us when. You aren't going to give us the cutscenes that were promised and are instead going to insist it's because you want to allow players to relive these unforgettable moments as they were, and you aren't going to address any of the other questions for a long time, if ever. Why the hell should we waste any more energy on this company?" Blizzard also took no time to address the changes made to the end-user license agreement that essentially gives Blizzard all ownership to any custom maps or games or ideas created within the Warcraft 3 ecosystem. So if you make the next Dota, guess what? That belongs to Blizzard now, and it isn't your idea anymore. They have no real good excuse to give on that front, so they're just staying silent. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I also cannot say I'm surprised, given Blizzard's past apologies and statements have been equally boilerplate, especially with J. Allen Brack, the CEO himself, and the way he addressed the whole Blitzchung debacle. This is about what I've come to expect from Blizzard in this day and age, and it is so sad and unfortunate to see what this company I grew up with has become, just so corporate to a point where they cannot admit their own mistakes. They place the blame on players in this very low-key and friendly way. And when they do provide some kind of excuse, it smells like BS from a mile away. So, yeah, this is where we're at right now, folks. These are my thoughts on the developer update provided here. It is far from satisfactory, and I generally get the sense that if you are upset with Warcraft 3 Reforged, those who are upset, that portion of the community, this is not going to appease them in any way. In fact, if you scroll down through the comments, you can see that, yeah, people are not buying any of it. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this statement provided by the Warcraft 3 Reforged team by Blizzard. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.